Congratulations! My goodness, what an episode! I was on the edge of my seat, hoping that it wouldn't end. I was like, it can't end that way. Oh, it can't end that way. Oh, it can't end that way. And when it was done, I had very mixed emotions about the episode. As I tweeted, I respect the hell out of it, but I hate this fate for Loki himself. But I feel a little better about it after doing my notes for this breakdown, and I think you will too by the time we're done here. Unless you already feel good about it. And then how can you be so cruel to Loki? I wish more people were watching this show. I hope people maybe binge it. Although it's about to get real busy with the holiday season, and I just, Loki might just slip into the time stream. It's such a shame. All right, so yeah, does Loki just have to sit there forever, holding the timelines? What if he has to itch his nose? I was like, he can't even move. I mean, he who remains at least got to hang out in his man cave. But the irony, Loki finally harnesses time and space, literally able to go anywhere in time and space. But then his fate is that he has to sit still. I have loved Loki's manic energy in these 2 seasons, played perfectly by Tom Hiddleston, which came to a stunning crescendo in the first half of this final episode. A brilliant, funny, charming character who, is a little mischievous, whatever. And to see him have to sit in the corner now, when I saw his fate revealed on the show, it felt to me like he was being punished. As I told you last week, I feel a kinship with Loki, so I took his fate personally. But I guess I haven't had the same character development that Loki has, because one of you, responding to my tweet last night, who's more in touch with and not afraid of your emotions, pointed out to me that Loki started out as a selfish narcissist who wanted to be a god for power and glory, but ended up truly becoming a god only when he gave up everything to save everyone, including his friends. But wait a minute, didn't Richard Grant's Loki also give up everything to save his friends? So that Loki also kind of was evolved. What? But it's fine, I don't care. That's beautiful. That is beautiful. And it's really sold by Tom Hiddleston's eye acting. I was like, the face and eye acting is just off the charts here. And also, I think his cheekbones are serious, a secret weapon. I mean, it's just incredible. It's just great. This is the role that Tom Hiddleston was born to play. I love it. And he's not, some actors are like, I'm more than just my Marvel character. But Tom Hiddleston has been on his own journey and discovered that there ain't nothing else out there for him. So he's just taken that up and leaned into it and, ascended to fan goddom, in my opinion. I mean, he's just amazing. But why does he have to be benched, even if it's a gold bench? Man. The sequence, though, wow, and we're going to gush about it in a moment. But first, there is more poeticness to discuss with the episode. Now, wait till you hear this. Not only is Loki sitting still at the end, but Mobius is standing still at the end. A parallel that must be intentional because this show is too smart for it not to be. I love that. Mobius's line that he wants to just let time pass for a while naturally, combined with Owen Wilson's acting and the cinematic brilliance of that shot, I was like, that's beautiful. That hit me in the feels. I loved that. I was also touched by it being Mobius and Sylvie there at the end for Loki, standing there at the door. And while I do agree that it's important to depict some guys as just friends, right? This show has established that all Lokis are bisexual. And so if this was a Netflix or a Max show, make no mistake, you'd be looking at a throuple. And if not a throuple, at the very least, a part of why Loki is drawn to Mobius is because he's attracted to him a little bit. And I think you've seen shades of that on this show. But because it's a Disney show, they're not willing to go all the way. I mean, I feel once you open a door, you got to walk through it. And they did open that door last season. But in my opinion, I think that's part of the dynamic there. And some of you, again, some characters are just friends, but I don't think that's the case here. All right, anyway, I also think it's interesting that that Loki was what held this trio together, because Mobius and Sylvie have absolutely no interest in hanging out together now that Loki isn't around anymore. They're like, okay, well, bye. If Loki comes back, let me know. So is this really the end of Loki and Mobius? I don't need to see Sylvie again, do you? I mean, she was nice. I liked her. But I mean, her relationship, I think, with Loki is, moved on to the platonic stage. And I don't think she brings enough to the table, especially this season. So I'm ready for someone else. All right. So anyway, head writer Eric Martin is saying that this is the end of the Loki show. It was only ever meant to be 2 seasons, but he's not Kevin Feige. So, and I just don't believe it, because the TVA is already returning in Deadpool 3, where they have a direct hand in setting up Secret Wars. So I don't see how this could possibly be the end of the story. And they're not going to bench Loki forever, or Mobius, these characters. Although we have yet to see Shang-Chi return, so maybe. Now, maybe on the other hand, though, Marvel is rewriting their own timelines. We do know that they are having some serious problems over there, and some projects like Captain America 4 and Daredevil are being delayed significantly because they basically need to be started over from scratch. Because some took the end of this episode with the TVA monitoring Kangs, but Mobius reporting that none of them are a threat, except for one that made a little trouble around the 616, which is obviously the Quantumania story, to mean that Kangs are now off the table, that Kangs have been taken care of. And I think that's certainly a read that you can take away from the finale here, and one that Kevin Feige might be tempted to go with, considering that Jonathan Major's legal situation just seems to be getting worse and worse. Word amongst scoopers in the scooper community was that the new driving purpose of the TVA was to hunt Kang variants. But that didn't seem to be the case when the actual episode aired. I mean, unless it was like real subtle. I think if that was the case, they could, like the sole purpose of the TVA, they could have set that up a heck of a lot better by, I don't know, having them go after a Kang variant at the very end. Although now, what is the point of the TVA? I had hoped that Loki, by the way, would at least be able to join the new War Room group via Zoom. I mean, he can't even do that. I thought he'd just zoom in from the chair, maybe. I'm like, he saved the TVA, which meant so much to him, and now he doesn't even get to be a part of it? It's so sad. Some of you are going around saying, oh, well, he's not totally stuck in the chair, Grace. He can astral project. But if that was the case, I think they would have established that again at the end of the episode. And he'd been like, hey, everybody, I'm okay. Don't worry about me. Don't feel bad. And based on what I know about Deadpool 3, the way things are left here does not make any sense. But with that movie now pushed to late July 2024 and about to go back into production, maybe they're going to change and tweak the storyline a little bit there too. I mean, how can Deadpool 3 effectively set up Secret Wars when who knows how far off in the future that movie is? As I said, Captain America 4 just got delayed, so did Thunderbolts. They got pushed to 2025. Oh my gosh, that's nuts. Maybe Deadpool 3 sets up Kang Dynasty, because, there's a rumor going around that, this is I had heard they were trying to save cool superhero characters from the pruned timelines, although they don't prune timelines anymore. So there's a new rumor going around that they're going to create an army to go up against the Kang variants in a new multiversal war. But then does that mean they're setting up Kang Dynasty? But if Kang Dynasty features an army of variants, then what the heck is the point of Secret Wars? This just seems like a mess. So let's refocus on the season finale. I feel like Kevin Feige is almost Loki sitting in a chair like that, but he's just trying to untie this giant knot. He's like, well, how did this happen to me? From a craftsmanship perspective, though, wow, this topped not just any show, but any movie that the MCU has ever produced. This was incredible. The directing, the writing, the score, particularly this episode, was phenomenal. And the acting from Mr. Tom Hiddleston were just top notch. It doesn't get any better than that, than this, in my opinion. The MCU opening done backwards, but then they made the choice to go with Natalie Holt's haunting score rather than doing the MCU theme backwards. They could have run that backwards. But that was the right choice. They just made every right stylistic choice they could. But was even cooler, above all that, for this episode, was that I felt that it really evoked the magic of the comic book storytelling medium, especially the scene where Loki ascends to true godhood. I felt like I was looking at a comic book come to life. To see him finally don a traditional Norse Loki costume that looks so authentic for live action. I mean, with Richard Grant, we got a comics accurate costume in season 1. And this new one, I felt was a perfect combination of that look in the comics, but also Norse mythology. And it was so cool to see Loki transform from his TVA outfit, a modern suit and tie, to become this ancient, but still at the same time timeless god. I mean, for all his talk about being a god, he's like, oh, I'm a god, remember? I was like, are you? I mean, I think you're just, as some of you said, a narcissist. But I didn't feel Thor or any of the Asgardians were gods, right? But here, for the first time, I was like, that's a god. His green cape that became a bunch of timelines, that's right out of something they would do in the comics. It's such a fantastic idea. And with his green magical energy keeping the timelines alive. Kudos to the VFX team, by the way. Mwah, it was all perfect. It was beautiful. Giving a green glow to that web of time of stories. And that is what time is, right? Stories unfolding. A lot of you, by the way, are saying that Loki has become the god of stories, just as he has in Marvel Comics. And I think that's also very interesting, because one could say that in the past, stories were a nice word for lies, fiction, right? But just as Loki evolves into a heroic person, he comes to represent truths, like real life stories, because he's, all of time. That's great. So this sequence reminded me very much of the comic book artwork of Esad Ribic, if you've ever read a recent Thor comic from a couple of years back. That was an incredible run with him and Jason Aaron. And it's some of Thor's greatest storylines, especially recently, including Gore the God Butcher, which was butchered by Taika Waititi in Thor Love and Thunder. So on that note, I agree with many of you that it would have been nice to see Thor perhaps show up here, but I guess it's too soon. This just happened. But I think that that's the feeling that we have means that this episode did its job. You're like, oh my God, poor Loki. Thor, get over here. And Marvel producer Kevin Wright, how many Kevins they got over there? Kevin Wright has said that the plan is to reunite Thor and Loki. And I think that when Thor finds out what has happened to his brother, both his tragic fate and how he's grown, he's going to, of course, want to rush to his side and see if he can free him. And I bet he can. They can save each other, right? Thor needs a little saving right now. Also, speaking of Norse mythology and Marvel Comics, I mean, anyone who has read Thor comics alone knows that's the World Tree, which has always been missing from the MCU version of Thor. They had the 10 realms, but they didn't have the World Tree. The World Tree in the comics connects the 10 realms, but here it seems now that the MCU has kicked it up a notch to link all of time and space. The multiverse, really. But then how does what happened in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness fit in with all this? Where Doctor Strange, with America Chavez's help, was able to travel the multiverse without the TVA's help or intervention. Sloppy, Marvel, really sloppy, but whatever. I mean, we'll just go with it. But while the MCU itself is unraveling right now, the bright points are clearly Wanda and Loki, who are now both benched. What? And just when they were both at their most powerful with amazing headgear. How are these two characters benched? I mean, it's insane. With no seeming plans in the near future to bring them off the bench. It's just insane. I think fans would go nuts to see them both back in the MCU, and maybe teaming up even, as the MCU magic corner of Kevin Feige's cinematic universe screams out to expand. And he's just ignoring it. And I know that he's like, oh, Young Avengers, and everyone's like, what? No. I mean, we'll talk about Young Avengers, coming off of the Marvels, but come on. All right, so I know that some of you are saying we still have Loki variants, but this series has made it clear that when it comes to our Loki, there is only one. Plus, none of his variants, even if they do look like Tom Hiddleston, have gone on this journey, so we would lose all this progress, and we would see a character that I think would feel, like been there, done that. I also think Kevin Feige slows things down too much with the pit stops that he's starting to make. Like, introducing Wiccan is, of course, incredibly important, but why is it being done on an Agatha Disney Plus show? We don't have this kind of time. Why not dive further into the MCU magic storyline with the big guns, Wanda, Loki, Doctor Strange, and add Wiccan and Clea, and sure, why not Agatha into that one single project? I mean, it's just taking too long. Now, speaking of gods, people will lose interest by the time these characters return. Now, speaking of gods, we ended up getting a very different one than I had expected. Because as Loki mastered time slipping, able to not only travel anywhere in space and time, but freeze time as well, that was cool. And probably also, like He Who Remains, not only freeze other people in time, but be able to move them through space. I think that's what He Who Remains was doing with Sylvie there. That is an incredibly powerful individual. I mean, Loki was able to give sentries to learn the science necessary to take the lead in trying to save the loom. I loved that. It was very well edited, and it was a great expression on Tom Hiddleston's face when he realized that he just had to do it. And as he walked through time and space again and again, trying to save everything, I was in awe, not just of his increasing power, but how as he kept removing himself from time and space, how alone he was quickly becoming. I thought that was incredible. It's like you could just see him separating from everybody he loved. I mean, he was already making a huge sacrifice, I think, at that point. That plays in nicely again with what happened with Mobius at the end, how he finally admitted how alone and adrift that he had become and wanted to just be anchored close to the life that he once had. And again, just let time pass naturally. But this is an incredible power set for Loki, one I don't know if he can keep. Because, I mean, it would be hard. I mean, how would he hang out with anyone else? I mean, maybe when Thor eventually frees him from that chair, Loki will have to pass these abilities on to the person who takes his place. I have a theory on that. But first, let's talk about He Who Remains. That's clearly what at first it seemed that he wanted to do, to have someone take his place. And then it seemed that he had set all of this in motion from the end of season 1, merely so that Loki would learn all of these abilities so that he could take over from He Who Remains. But then He Who Remains tried to talk Loki into killing Sylvie and joining him to rule space and time together. But remember, He Who Remains doesn't do partners. Remember what happened to Renslayer? So that I think that obviously was just a trick. And he just cruelly wanted to make Loki kill Sylvie. That's vicious. And the kind of thing that Kang is supposed to do. But at least He Who Remains, I think we're not going to be hearing from him again because Loki didn't follow the plan. He went off book and he never did end up stopping Sylvie from killing He Who Remains. So I think he did. But what was He Who Remains' plan? Was that it? Just to get Loki to kill Sylvie and then somehow take care of Loki, right? I mean, we learned that the loom actually never would destroy time at all. It was a failsafe. And that if the timelines got out of control, it would reset the sacred timeline, pruning the branches that didn't belong. And I figured it out, okay? Because why was it then, if that was the case, that when the timelines exploded at the end of episode 4, we found all of our main characters on branched timelines? Were they going to be pruned? Was that what happened at the end of episode 5? I think it is. So I think what actually happened is that it wasn't all of time unraveling. It's just that time reset, the loom rebooted, right? And all these characters that we know were shot back to their original their branched timelines. And they were going to be pruned by the reset process. So it wasn't that all of time was unraveling at the end there. It was just those branched timelines were being pruned. And it just seemed like all of time because we were only looking at branched timelines. So that means that when Loki saves all the timelines at the end of the very, very end, that means he doesn't just save his friends, but he saves all the people on the branched timelines that they cared about. That's pretty freaking heroic. But how are there two Mobiuses, by the way? Yet X5, aka Brad, was fully living on his timeline. Although I don't think any of us would put it past X5 to kill his variant and take that place, as a celebrity. Now, we don't even know what happened to X5. That was quite the dangling thread that was left. But we at least saw what happened to Renslayer, kind of. It's quite a tease for a show that's not coming back. Although the ratings have been not great, so I don't know if they should. But she's back at the end of time after getting pruned, with the show seeming to suggest, by the way, that the ruins of the TVA are there. He Who Remains did say that he's rebuilt the TVA many, many times. And so I guess, some of the ruins are at the end of time. Although when I first saw Mobius lingering at the saying, I just thought it was really touching. I didn't know it was to show that how bleak things really are. But I think that flash of light at the end is the world tree going up in front of her. So I think she's going to go pay Loki a visit. I think her boots were made for walking, and that's just what she'll do. She's going to hike up there, and I think that she is the top candidate to take his place. She does want to be boss, and as Sylvie said, careful what you wish for. But I don't know if Renslayer would have a problem with that. She's very stoic, and it would make her not only in charge, but a god. And so I think that I could see that. And it really seems to me like something that would happen in the comics, because I've read a lot of stories in the Thor comics about the line of succession for gods, which are all excellent. And I think this would be great. Miss Minutes has also been rebooted, but OB can't guarantee she still doesn't have murderous code deep inside her. I can guarantee it. I think for sure that's going to happen. A good villain has to come back, and thankfully, Marvel didn't kill this one off like they do all the other ones. Finally, let's highlight some of the other awesome moments in this incredible episode. When Loki asks Mobius for advice, that was beautiful, about how to decide who lives and who dies, and Mobius shares that sad story about a TVA hunter, which is obviously Mobius. There's a brief moment when Mobius starts to choke up before he catches himself, and that was just so incredibly well done. I was like, wow, Owen Wilson, you don't get enough credit for your dramatic acting chops. Also in that story, although comedians often are so good at drama, as we've learned. Also in that story, Mobius says that it was Renslayer, his partner in the field back then. I like that little bit of extra information. She was the one who did what had to be done and prune that little boy. So I think she's also, what was she, like the child specialist? She's also the one who went after Sylvie. She's like, I got no problem with it. So more evidence that she's a good candidate to take over for Loki, and perhaps even be more effective, because Loki's like, I must save everybody, even if it means I have to sit here forever. He's like, I'm having a nervous breakdown. All right, so, and I love the first half or so of the episode, where Loki keeps trying again and again and again and again and again and again to save the day. It was so much fun, especially thanks to Tom Hiddleston's performance. He should get nominated for an Emmy for this, for acting. I hope he does. A couple of comic book actors are starting to, genre actors are starting to break through in the Emmy nominations, and Tom Hiddleston deserves to be one of them. I mean, Loki's frustration, plus being in a rush, but still wanting to be nice to everyone, was hilarious. I particularly liked it when he half-heartedly told Victor, for probably the umpteenth time, that he was being very brave. He's like, you're so brave, very brave, good, thank you, you're so brave. That was so funny. And then to see Victor spaghettified again and again and again. Oh, that was done so well. It was both horrifying and funny. And did you see they slipped his skull in there? I was like, wow. I love that the Loki creative team is trying to push the edge of the MCU envelope as much as possible, and pushing it out a little bit. I mean, it's clearly what fans want to see next, and I just think it's great. And I thought it was neat to revisit the He Who Remains scene from the season 1 finale. I was like, wow, that looks seamless. That was just so well done. And they just did a fantastic job recreating it. And for a moment, I thought Loki might actually kill Sylvie, particularly because she just wouldn't stop, and it was taking a really, really long time. I was like, I think that was He Who Remains' plan. Like, he was just going to wear Loki down. He's like, okay, keep trying. I think maybe around the millionth time you won't be able to take it anymore. But then Loki zigged when He Who Remains thought he was going to zig. And I once again enjoyed Jonathan Majors' performance as He Who Remains, still scarily unpredictable and disarming those around him by playing the fool. And to see him drop that foolish facade when talking to Loki, oh, that was fantastic. And he would occasionally put the fool facade back up to continue to disarm Loki and to demoralize him and to make everything seem pointless. I mean, what a master tactician, which is exactly what Kang is supposed to be. And Jonathan Majors played it brilliantly. Also, he made fun of himself, basically, by speaking so dismissively of Victor Timely. Wow! To both do the stutter with such heartbreaking sincerity, like when Victor Timely felt that he'd failed everybody, and then to effectively mock it in the very same episode, done by the same actor, bravo. Sylvie, for me, though, as I said, continues to not land this season, and she gives the big speech that makes Loki decide to give up everything. But her side of that scene just didn't work for me, and what sold it was Tom Hiddleston making us all truly heartfelt believe that he was in love for Sylvie, so much so that he was willing to sacrifice himself. At that point, I was like, I don't see it. I could much more see his connection to Mobius. So what did you think of the Loki Season 2 finale and Loki's fate? Do you feel it's permanent? I mean, I think we know it's not, but how long do you think it'll last, both from a creative standpoint and a business standpoint, considering how long and delayed Kevin Feige's dance card is at this point? And then what would you like to see happen next? Again, my vote is for Thor breaking Loki out of there and Renslayer taking over. Also, what are they going to do about Kang? What do you think is going to happen with Kang? What do you think is going to happen with the TVA the next time we see them in Deadpool 3? Will it just be Tom from Succession as Mr. Paradox? Or will OB, Hunter B-15, and Miss Minutes be back as well? I don't see how they couldn't be. That would just seem foolish. And then when is Mobius coming back? What about Mobius? And again, I'm okay with not seeing Sylvie again. I mean, we probably will for like a cameo at least. And I'm sure I'll be like, oh, hey, it's Sylvie. That's nice. But I mean, again, Kevin Feige's dance card is really full, and we have to start pruning some people. I mean, we all got to put our Renslayer hats on, and we got to save who we can. All right, so also, what do you think it's going to take for the rest of the MCU to ever reach this level of craftsmanship? I mean, it's just incredible. And I guess this is why this directing team, they did this episode, just got Daredevil. So that makes me feel a little bit better about that. But maybe it's too late for the MCU because I think they're just having a real rough patch. So we'll see. Even the good stuff isn't connecting, which is a real shame. All right, share your thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.